After researching and gathering the available information, we present it to you in this edition. However, it must be said that this represents only a tiny fragment of a word as complex as truth. Rumi once said, "Truth was a mirror in the hands of God. It fell and broke into 1,000 pieces. Everyone picked up a piece and believes they hold the whole truth." With this in mind, I invite you, or rather challenge you, to watch this video until the end. After reflecting deeply and consulting the judgment of your innermost conscience, leave a comment sharing your concept of consciousness. Let us try to gather those scattered fragments of truth. Now, without further ado, let us begin from the very beginning. Since the dawn of humanity, a question has persisted like an ancient melody, reverberating through caves, temples, and laboratories. What is consciousness? Many have felt it, all experience it, yet few have dared to define it. And those who have tried find themselves ensnared in the cycle of illusions, as though consciousness itself were mocking our intellect. For consciousness is not merely a concept. It is this, what you are living right now, the sensation of being you, here and now, the whisper that accompanies every thought, the silent witness observing from behind your eyes. Stripped of technical jargon, it is the faculty that enables us to perceive the world and to recognize ourselves as something distinct from it. It is that which makes us gaze at the sky and wonder, who am I? But when we try to capture it in words, it slips away. Philosophers have circled it with arguments for millennia, while scientists pursue it with instruments, and still it remains an untamed mystery. Consciousness and intelligence, though closely related, are not the same. Intelligence can solve problems. Consciousness, however, knows there is a problem to solve. A subtle, yet profound distinction. And from where does this strange faculty arise? Science suggests that consciousness did not emerge all at once, but rather blossomed gradually, like a plant growing through the cracks of time. It was not a sudden spark, but a slow dawn, the result of millions of microevolutions, of imperceptible adjustments across hundreds of millions of years. Thus, human consciousness, so complex, so refined, is merely the summit of an immense staircase, a staircase built with the patience of the universe. But then arises the great question: what was the first step? What was that primordial moment when the inert first became conscious, even if only faintly? To discover it, we must do more than observe. We must remember with the memory of the cosmos. For perhaps at the origin of consciousness lies the origin of what we truly are. At this point, let me know in the comments what consciousness means to you. Let us enrich this intricate definition with the fragments of truth that each of us carries within. To understand how consciousness emerged from the cosmic silence, it is not enough to look at the present. We must go back, far back, to a time when the universe was blind and deaf, where existence simply was, with no one to perceive it. Imagine a stone, motionless, unaware of the passage of time, of light, of heat. Is it alive? No. Is it conscious? Many would say no. But some voices, both ancient and modern, whisper an unsettling doubt. What if even the stone carries within it a spark of consciousness? Panpsychists suggest that everything, absolutely everything, possesses a minute degree of consciousness. Not a mind nor emotions, but a kind of primordial perception, hidden within the very fabric of reality. An ancient vision re-emerging today, as science begins to admit that perhaps not everything can be explained solely through the physical. But if we seek a more tangible manifestation, we must take a step forward towards life. Because with life, something changes. A living being does not merely exist, it acts. It moves, protects itself, reproduces. And to do so, it needs a certain form of sensitivity, a pre-consciousness, if you will. Let us consider one of the simplest organisms on Earth, Trichoplax adherens. It has no brain, no eyes, no nerves, and yet it moves through its environment, not with clear intention, but at random. However, when it detects food, its movement slows. When no food is present, it accelerates. A simple but effective strategy. It does not need to know there is food. It merely needs to respond. This is the first indication, a behavior that is not purely mechanical, but a form of sensitivity, a system that not only acts but reacts to its environment in a way beneficial to its survival. Yet consciousness, as we understand it, demands more than simple reaction. It requires intention. And that appears when beings stop moving at random and begin moving with purpose. Here, a small but brilliant protagonist enters. Dugesia tigrina, a tiny worm with a peculiar face. Unlike Trichoplax, this being does not merely react to its surroundings. It decides based on its internal state. When it is full, it remains still. When it is hungry, it seeks food. It uses chemical sensors in its head to track the scent of nourishment. It does not merely react, it chooses. And in choosing, it opens a new doorway in the history of consciousness. Now, the external world and the internal world begin to converse. And that conversation is the seed of the self. The little worm that chooses to move according to its hunger was only the beginning, a timid awakening. But soon, life took another leap, a gigantic one. And that leap took the form of vision. To see. Seeing is not merely detecting light. It is recognizing. It is knowing that something is there, even before touching it, even before smelling it. Vision was the great revolution. For the first time, beings could perceive the world at a distance, and with that, they could plan, anticipate, imagine. Consciousness, which until that point had been reaction and impulse, became perception of space. An animal no longer responded only to what was immediate. It now understood where it was heading, and what awaited or threatened it. Eyes became portals, not only to the external world, but to the construction of an internal world, a subjective reflection of reality, a mental representation that persisted even when the object vanished from sight. Now, imagine an animal that, thanks to its eyes, locates food. It sees it. It desires it. It moves towards it. But what happens when that food disappears behind an obstacle? Here arises another prodigious leap: memory, the ability to hold an image, an intention within. The food no longer needs to be physically present, because it now lives inside thought. With memory comes continuity. We are no longer mere fragments of moments, but a line connecting past, present, and an emerging future. This gives rise to what humans call object permanence, the understanding that something continues to exist even when it is no longer visible. This ability develops early in humans. Babies discover it at around 8 months of age. But we are not alone. Birds possess it too. Chicks, almost from birth, show signs of understanding that the world does not vanish when it is out of sight. And that is monumental. Why? Because with memory comes anticipation. And to anticipate is to look towards tomorrow. It is, for the first time in the history of life, to live within time. Consciousness ceases to be merely a lamp illuminating the present. It becomes a lighthouse shining toward the future. Animals begin to decide not only according to the now, but also according to what is yet to come. This opens the door to self-control, planning, and even momentary sacrifice for greater reward. And with it, consciousness grows more refined, more human. And without realizing it, the simple act of waiting for something better becomes a manifestation of conscious intelligence, the seed of what we call wisdom. In the previous chapter, we left consciousness peering into the future. Animals that not only acted but anticipated. Some could even wait for a better reward. A simple decision, yes, but also an act of profound intelligence. Now, let us journey to the skies. There, among the trees, dwells one of the most mysterious creatures of the animal kingdom, the western scrub jay. This bird is not only capable of hiding its food for later, it is also aware that others might be watching. And if it suspects that someone has seen it hide its treasure, it will unearth it and conceal it elsewhere. What does this mean? That this small being not only acts, it thinks about what another might be thinking. This marks one of the great leaps in the history of consciousness, the so-called theory of mind. The ability to put oneself in another's place, to understand that not everyone sees, feels, or desires the same as oneself. With it, empathy appears, and so does deceit. For if I can imagine how you think, I can help you, or I can deceive you. Consciousness grows more complex, and to hold all this complexity, nature creates its most powerful tool: language. Words are not merely sounds. They are symbols that allow us to share thoughts, emotions, dreams, hypotheses. They enable us to build worlds that do not exist and to remember those that have passed. With language, consciousness undergoes a radical transformation. For the first time, it thinks about itself. Now we can ask, who am I? Why do I exist? What lies beyond what I see? And suddenly, we are writing books, building temples, imagining gods, exploring the cosmos, all driven by a flame that perhaps began with a simple desire to eat. Because yes, the most accepted theory holds that consciousness was born as a survival tool, a mechanism for a mobile being to find food. Those without this ability wandered aimlessly and perished. Those who could anticipate, imagine, and remember survived. And thus, generation after generation, that basic drive for nourishment sculpted what we now call the mind. Paradoxical, is it not? Our consciousness, that jewel which allows us to love, to create art, to dream of galaxies, may have originated simply because someone was hungry. But within that primal hunger, there was also a yearning, the desire to live. And perhaps, just perhaps, that spark of life is consciousness itself. What is it that you truly are? Are you this aging body? Are you the thoughts that come and go? Are you the emotions that flare and then fade? Swami Sarvapriyananda, a contemporary sage of the Vedanta tradition, offers us a profound and ancient answer. You are consciousness. You are Chaitanya. In Sanskrit, this word is also known as Chit, pointing to that which shines within you, beyond body and mind, beyond time and change. According to Swami Sarvapriyananda, there is within you a fundamental consciousness that not only animates your mind, but illuminates it. And through it, shines upon every organ of your body. This consciousness is not something you possess. It is what you are. It is the very ground of your being, the silent witness of all experience. Yet this is not a form of consciousness that science can dissect. It is not a chemical production of the brain. It is not a mere byproduct of biological processes. The Vedic tradition asserts something far more radical. Consciousness is not part of the body or the mind. It is something separate, eternal, and ever-present, even when body and mind fade away. Swami Sarvapriyananda presents this teaching through 5 key insights that transform our understanding of ourselves. First, consciousness is not part of the body or mind. Modern science often claims that the mind is produced by the brain and that consciousness is a result of neural activity. But Vedanta teaches that consciousness is completely independent. You are not the changing body. You are not the restless mind. You are the unchanging witness, steady and serene. Second, consciousness permeates and illuminates everything. Although it is not part of your body or mind, it infuses them, bathing every action and thought with awareness. It is through this inner light that you think, feel, perceive, move, and choose. Without it, there would be no experience at all. Third, consciousness is not limited by the body. It is not trapped inside your skull or confined to a particular space. It is boundless, formless, limitless, like the open sky, containing all, but never contained. Fourth, consciousness can be recognized through the body and mind. Although it transcends them, it shines through their activities. Like sunlight reflecting on water, consciousness reveals itself through thought, sensation, perception, and reflection. Thus, you can say, I am conscious. Fifth and finally, consciousness exists even when body and mind are absent, though then it cannot be experienced in the usual sense. Swami Sarvapriyananda offers a luminous analogy. Think of the light emitted by a lamp. If you place your hand beneath it, you see and feel the light reflected. If you remove your hand, the light remains, though you no longer perceive it directly. Such is consciousness. When body and mind are present, it is experienced. When they are absent, it remains, untouched and eternal. This ancient and profound teaching is not intended merely to explain a phenomenon. It seeks to awaken you, to remind you of what you have always been, the light beyond all change, the boundless presence that witnesses all. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "We are not the things that happen to us, but the consciousness that observes them." For millennia, humanity has suspected that behind every experience lies a silent, unchanging witness. And although the words change, soul, mind, spirit, observer, the mystery endures. The historical Buddha, more than 2,500 years ago, avoided defining consciousness as something fixed. Instead, he described it as a flow, something that arises, transforms, and dissolves. Yet he also taught that by silencing thought and dissolving the ego, one could access a state beyond time and self, a state where consciousness is no longer personal, but vast and universal. In the modern age, scientists have sought to explore this elusive phenomenon through the physical realm. David Chalmers, philosopher of mind, famously called it the hard problem of consciousness. Why do we experience anything at all? Why is there a self that feels if the brain simply processes information? Science can explain how the eye detects light or how the brain reacts to pain, but it cannot yet explain why someone feels that light or that pain. The inner world remains an abyss, mysterious and unreachable by external instruments. For many, this marks the ultimate frontier of scientific inquiry. Roger Penrose, physicist and Nobel laureate, believes that consciousness cannot be explained by classical brain mechanics. Alongside anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff, he proposed a theory that sounds like science fiction, yet is grounded in serious physics, that consciousness arises from quantum processes within the microtubules of neurons. According to this theory, the mind is not just reacting to the world, it is intimately connected to the very structure of the universe. It is a view that echoes ancient mystical traditions, though it uses the language of modern science. From another perspective, author and physician Deepak Chopra argues that consciousness not only precedes matter, it actually creates it. For Chopra, the universe is not a mechanical accident, but a dynamic interplay of information, energy, and awareness. Reality, he says, is a projection of consciousness. Although controversial among scientists, this idea raises a profound question. What if consciousness is not an effect of the universe, but its cause? For Eckhart Tolle, consciousness is neither thought nor time. It is the silent space between them. True reality is not in the past or future, but in the eternal present. Only by silencing the mind and fully inhabiting the now can the true self be revealed. Then you realize you are not the observer of life. You are life itself, observing through the stillness. Even Carl Jung, father of analytical psychology, saw consciousness as more than a brain function. For him, the individual mind connected to a deeper collective unconscious, a timeless field of meaning that transcends the personal. Thus, from ancient Stoicism to quantum physics, from Buddha to Jung, consciousness emerges not merely as a brain function, but as a universal principle. The vast ocean where our tiny islands of thought float. And so, the question is not simply, what is consciousness? But rather, who is asking the question? Perhaps we are not bodies that produce consciousness, but consciousness itself, dreaming briefly that it is a body. We live as if what we perceive were real, as if what we see, touch, and hear showed us the objective truth of the world. But what if it is not so? Since the dawn of philosophy, thinkers have wrestled with a troubling question. Do we experience the world as it truly is, or only as our brain allows us to? Some insist, yes, we see reality as it is. Others, more cautiously, affirm, not exactly. And the truth seems to lie somewhere more elusive. We do not see the world directly. We see what our senses can capture and what our brain can interpret. Imagine this. Your brain is locked inside a dark box, your skull. It has no direct contact with light or sound or the outside world. Everything it knows comes from electrical impulses sent by your sensory organs. It never touches reality directly. It only interprets signals. This presents a fascinating problem known to philosophers and scientists alike, the problem of inverse inference. You receive an effect and must guess its cause. If you hear a loud bang, is it a gunshot, a slammed door, or merely thunder? Your brain does not know. It only feels the vibration. And so, it guesses. What does it base that guess upon? Memory, your past experience. And it does so rapidly, almost automatically. Amazingly, your brain is not merely building a model of the world, it is constructing a model of your body within the world. This leads to another extraordinary ability, categorization. In psychology, to categorize means grouping similar experiences to predict the future. If you see a round, crunchy fruit, you call it an apple. But your brain goes further. It groups by function. These apples are good for baking. These are not. These groupings, these categories, exist only in your mind. Here, something even more astonishing occurs. Humans do not only organize natural objects, we create entire realities based on shared functions and collective agreements. This is called social reality. Think of money, a piece of paper with no intrinsic value, given immense power because we believe in its function. Or borders, invisible lines that divide territories and define people as citizens or foreigners. Even our emotions can be shaped by this shared reality. An expression of anger, a furrowed brow, acquires meaning because we have agreed it should, within a cultural context. Thus, if the brain lives in darkness, if what we call real is in part an internal creation, are we trapped inside that box? Not entirely, because the brain does not only predict, it imagines. It can take fragments of the past and combine them into forms that never existed before. That is imagination, our greatest strength, and sometimes our deepest prison. For imagination allows us to dream, to create, to move forward. But it can also distance us from the present. The key, perhaps, lies in balance between the world we receive and the world we create, the silent observer. After traversing the labyrinths of the mind, the whispers of ancient sages, and the hypotheses of science, a silent truth begins to emerge. Consciousness is not something we have, it is what we are. We live confined within a box of bone, interpreting shadows and signals, mistaking the reflection for the source. Yet something within us knows. It knows there is more. It knows that behind every thought, sensation, and act, there is an unmoving, eternal witness that simply is. The Stoics intuited it. The Buddha taught it. Quantum physics brushes against it. And you, listening to these words, recognize it. Perhaps we are not here to solve the mystery, but to live it, to contemplate it, to remember we are not merely observers of the universe, but the universe observing itself. In that consciousness shining without cause, without form, without end, lies the seed of all reality. And the secret is that it has always been there, waiting, silent, alive, just like you. And that concludes our video. If you enjoyed the content as much as we did, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Leave a comment below. We'd love to hear your feedback and suggestions for future videos. And don't forget to turn on notifications to stay up to date with all our updates. Thanks for being part of our community. See you in the next video.